All right, we're starting lesson 2A today, which is your first lesson using Illustrator and Illustrator tools now that you know a little bit about the workspace. Let's go ahead and get started. Follow along as I navigate to the files that you'll be needing. In lesson 2, we're going to open up the Start 1 and 2 file. I'm going to hold down the Control key as I select both files and click Open. All right. If we have time, you're going to be playing around with the Lesson 2 Start file, but we're going to get started here with the Lesson 2 Start 1. I'm going to go ahead and put that up top so I can see it, so you can go back and forth if you want, but let's start here on this file. Let's go ahead and save this. Let's go to File, Save As. If you have not done so already, in your folder, you need to create a Print Shop class folder. If you don't know how to create new folders, click here. This little button up top. We're going to call this Print Shop. Inside this Print Shop folder, I want you to create a folder called Lessons. So again, click on this folder button to create a Lessons folder. And then open that up, and we're going to save this in here, and I want you to call this Lesson 2A because we're going to be doing more than one file here. So Lesson 2A, and click Save. All right, now we're ready to begin. Before we go into the lesson, we're going to reset our Essentials once it saves. You may have to click OK to that dialog box. So to reset Essentials, remember, go to Essentials at the top, Reset Essentials. It should set everything back as is in case you were monkeying around with it in the last lesson. I want to show you again that all of your panels, anything you might need, is under Window here. But let's go ahead and go to View. And I want you to go to Fit All in Window. Notice when you do, you actually have two what are called artboards. It's almost like two separate pages. You can have multiple artboards, and in later lessons we'll talk about how you add those. When you've done that, you've seen that there's two. Let's go ahead and go back to View, Fit Artboard in Window. So when you go to View, Fit Artboard in Window, it's going to put you back on the first artboard. This is a quick review. Remember, you can scroll through your artboards down here as well. All right, so today in this lesson, we're going to be going over a variety of topics, basic still in nature, but necessary in creating your logo design, which is where we're going with this. Please make sure you use your note sheet with this and you follow along and you write down notes. Pause this video often so that you can write down these steps in these notes. The first thing we're going to talk about is how do you select an object. The easiest way to do that is to grab this tool here, which is called your selection tool. This is your most basic tool you're going to be using quite often in Illustrator projects and lessons. Each different shape in an Illustrator file is called an object. So if I say select the object, it means select the shape or the grouping of shapes. So to select an object with our selection tool, you simply click. Notice if you click, it's going to change what your object is. Okay, so a couple things when you make that selection. When I click on my apple, notice here over to the left, my fill shows what color it is, and the stroke shows the outline, which right now the red means it has no stroke, it has no outline on it. If I want to select more than one object at a time, I have to hold down the Shift key. So I'm going to hold down the Shift key and click on the second apple. Please try that now. To deselect, I can do a couple things. I can click in the white space, or I can go up to Select at the top and go to Deselect. For me, it's much easier to simply click in the white space. Another way that you can select is to click and drag a marquee around the objects. You do not have to drag over the complete objects. I'll show you up here top. If I click and drag just over a portion of the objects, see how it selected all of those fence posts. So again, I can click, I can shift click, or I can click and drag. That's 3 easy ways to make a selection. Another way that you can make a selection is with something called the Magic Wand tool. If I click on the Magic Wand tool, it's going to select that object, but it's also going to select any other object that has the same fill and stroke. So see, I'm going to deselect that again. If I click on the apple, the yellow apple, notice it also selects the yellow hat because they both have the same fill and stroke. Go ahead and try that now. Let's go ahead and go to select, deselect. Show you another way to do the same thing. If I wanted to select, suppose that I have a ton of objects, they're spread all over the page, they're not grouped together like the fence posts are, but I know I want to select all of them that are the same fill and stroke. There's a way to do that as well. I can go to select, I can go to same, and I can go to fill and stroke. But you have to have something selected first, so let me show you that again. So with your selection tool, select the apple. I can go up to that select, same, fill, and stroke. It's going to select both of them. We're going to go ahead and practice a little bit about changing the fill and stroke, and then we're going to go back to that selection. So I want you to click on just one of your apples. And I want you to change, actually let's select 2 of your apples, don't care which 2. And we're going to practice changing the fill. You can do this a couple different ways. You can use the fill foreground chip here, or you can go up in the control panel up top. Either way works. If you click on the control panel up top, it's just going to show you the basic swatches that are going to load. If you come over to the fill foreground chip and you double click on it, it's going to open up so that you can click and select a wider variety. So go ahead and through one of those methods, I want you to select a new color, and notice it's going to change the color for both of those. And then go ahead and deselect those. Select one of those 2 apples that you just changed the color for, and this time we're going to apply a stroke to it. So your stroke is up here. Right now it's set to none. We're going to click that drop-down menu, and we're going to put let's put a black stroke on it. All right, and then deselect. Now I want to show you what this same does. So let's say I wanted to select the same color. So click on your first apple where it doesn't have a stroke or the same colors. Notice if I go to select, same, if I go to fill and stroke, it's not going to select anything else because there's nothing else that has both the same fill and stroke. This has a stroke, this does not. However, if I go to select, same, fill color, it will select this. So they're not identical, but they have the same fill color. Likewise, if I click on that apple with the black stroke and I go to select, same, stroke color, it should, oh, we must have a slightly different color on these fence posts. Let's try this again. Let's try stroke weight. There we go. They have the same stroke weight. They have a slightly different color. My guess is when I selected it, one of them is a slightly darker black than the other. So if you select that, notice that this apple is not selected because it doesn't have a stroke. These do not have a stroke. But because these have the same weight, they're selected. Go ahead and I want you to deselect everything. And then I'm going to show you a little bit about resizing and reshaping. So click on one of your apples with your direct selection tool, or with your regular selection tool, mind you. And you can change the size. Very important to change the size without distorting. And here's what I mean by distorting. If I click and drag, do you see how it's warped it? I'm going to undo that. To make sure that you resize it, you have to drag from the corner and you have to hold down the shift key. Super duper important, because if you don't, it will resize it, but it will distort it. So shift as you drag a corner point, because if I drag a corner point, I can accidentally still distort it. And now that I've started it, if I hold down my shift key, it constrains it. Constrains means it makes it bigger or smaller without changing its proportions. So I want you to go ahead and try that on one of your apples, and I want you to write that down in your notes, please. All right, now that you're back, I'm going to show you that you can also rotate your apple a little bit. If I still have my selection tool, if I let it hover just slightly outside, not way far away, but just slightly away from that, and I click and drag, notice I can turn and rotate my apple. Please try that now. All right, if I want to do some advanced options, so really all I can do is make it tall and skinny, short and fat. I can rotate it. I can change it a little bit. I can change the size with the selection tool, but I really can't change the apple a whole lot. So if I want to do that, I have to grab a new tool. I have to use something called the direct selection tool. It's the next arrow over. It's the solid white one. You first start by clicking on your apple. I'm actually going to zoom in so I can see what I'm doing here. Notice, as soon as you click on it with this tool, it looks totally different because you have all these other little extra points. An object in Illustrator is made of points. It's like a connect the dot. Some of the points create straight lines, some of them create curved lines. This is a complex shape because it's created using curved shapes, and we'll get into that in a later lesson. But notice now, with this direct selection tool, I can grab on just specific anchor points and distort that shape of that apple. So I can literally change this shape. So if I click on the center points of these, I can move it. I can also change the slope of the line by dragging on these, which are the handles. Okay, it's not an anchor. Anchors are the points that are connected. A handle is the direction of the line. So click and drag. I want you to take a little bit of time with your direct selection tool, and I want you to morph or change the shape of one of your apples. If you really mess up, you can go to Edit, Undo. Notice the keyboard shortcut is Control-C. So if I want to go back, Control-Z, I can do it as many times. I'm just hitting Control-Z and I'm going back in time here. All right, please pause the video now. Write that down in your notes about Control-Z, going back in time, and what the direct selection tool does. All right, now that you're back, let's go ahead and go to File, Save As. File, Save. We shouldn't have to go to Save As. We've already saved it once, and it should save it back to our Lessons folder. All right, we're going to move on, and we're going to talk a little bit about aligning objects. Now, this is a little tricky, so I want you to make sure you pay attention. First thing I need you to do is deselect everything, either by clicking in the white space or going to Select, Deselect up at the top. We're going to align all these picket fence posts because right now they're a mess. They're all over now I could click and use my arrow keys and try to align them, but sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Instead, what we're going to do is I'm going to select all of them. So do that with one of the methods that you know how. And then we're going to go up here to your align options. Now, you may not have them in your control panel. Mine are all out. Yours might be sandwiched under this little icon here. It'll have a drop-down menu. So if you click on this, yours might pull up a bigger drop-down menu that should have all of these in there. Okay. So these are your alignment options. If you let it hover, notice it's going to tell you what it does. Okay, align right, align left. We need to find where it says vertical align bottom. So it should look like this icon. Notice the line underneath. It says if I click that, it's going to align all of them to the page to the bottom. Okay. Now, if it didn't do that, if it got really squirrely, it's because you might have it checked to align to selection or align to the object. So I'm going to undo that so you can see what the difference is. So I'm going to switch here and I'm going to go to align to selection because when it aligns to the artboard, it's aligning it to this edge, which is the outside edge of this paper. I'm going to go to align to selection, so you may have to change that. Now if I click that same button, watch what's going to happen. It didn't move them to the bottom, but it lined them all up. Okay, so pause the video now. Try those alignment issues. If you have problems, just Edit, Undo, or Control-Z. If you still can't get it, call me over and I will help you. All right, we're going to go ahead and we're going to grab this bottom bar all the way at the bottom. And we're going to move that up to the top. And you can just do that however you want with the arrow keys or with the mouse. It's up to you. And then I want you to go ahead and I want you to select your fence post. All of it. And we're going to group these together. Grouping allows so that these are all separate objects. And if I want to click on it, it's a pain because I'd either have to do this or I'd have to click on each one. The easiest way to group it so that it's easier to move around is you're going to go to Object, group, or you can see the keyboard shortcut is Control G. Click on that. So now if I deselect, I click on it. If I click on one, it's automatically going to select all of them. So please group your fence together, write that in your notes, and file save. All right, let's go ahead and we're going to move this over onto the other artboard. So all we're going to do is we're going to grab our picket fence and we're going to move it over. And it should be in front of your tree. All right, now we're going to have some fun and we're going to have a little bit of fun with our tree. So the first thing we're going to do is I want you to select both the tree top and the tree trunk. I'm holding down that shift key. I want to group these together. So I'm going to go to Object, Group. Notice when I did it, put it on top of the fence. Don't freak out, it's okay. Now I could move this tree wherever I wanted to. If I want to make sure that it's dead center, in the center of my paper, again, I would go back up to my Align options. I will want to go to Align to Artboard, and I want to make sure that it's in the dead center. That's Align Horizontal Center, so it's making it dead center. You don't have to, you can use your mouse button, but this is how you know if you want something dead smack center in the page, you would click on that because it's going to align it. Okay, this means it's in the dead center going this way. So this aligns, just look at your little icons, it shows you what it does. All right, and now we want to put this behind the fence. Here's how we put this behind the fence. With your tree selected, go to Object, Arrange, and you want to go to Send to Back. In Illustrator, what it does is every time you create a new object or the later objects, it's always going to place them on top. If you want to change the arrangement order, you simply have to go to Object, Arrange. All right, we're going to ungroup our tree now. To ungroup it, click on it. To select it, we're going to go to Object, go to Ungroup. Now they're separate entities again. All right, now we're going to assemble our tree. Click on one of your apples, and I want you to drag it over on top of your tree. Because it was done later, it should show up on top. If not, go to Object, Arrange, and we're going to make some copies. So to make copies, and you're going to write this down in your notes, you're going to hold down the Alt key. When you hold down the Alt key with your selection tool, you should get a double-headed arrow. That means it's going to make a copy, and then you click and you drag. I would like you to do that. I'd like you to make, several, 5, 6 different copies, and then I want you to have some fun, and I want you to go ahead and change the color, change them any way you see fit.
And we're the founders of Tripping.com, the world's largest site for vacation rentals. Tripping.com is the fastest and easiest way to book vacation homes. Simply type in your
So you
destination and we'll show you all
change it
available
any
rentals
color you
from
want.
VRBO, TripAdvisor, Booking.com, and more. You'll save an average
If you
of
would like
18%
to, you can
per
put a
night
stroke
by
on. This
booking
is
your
a different way
vacation
to, if
rental
you
on
want to add the stroke
Tripping.com.
this way, simply click on it. It will bring it forward. You can double click there so you can make whatever color you want. You can even change the size up here. Here's how you change the size of your stroke. Whoa, that's really thick. All right, we'll go more into stroke and fill in a later project or a later lesson, but go ahead and have some fun with your apples. You can resize some. You can distort them if you want, but go ahead and change your apple colors. All right, now that you've got that done, we're going to do one last thing. I'm just showing you how you can build an illustration in Illustrator using multiple shapes. We're going to create some foliage, some leaves that go over top of these apples, because right now it just looks like they're sitting on top. If we want to make them look like they're in the leaves, we've got to create new leaves. Well, the easiest way to do that, we're just going to use the shape tool, the ellipse. So I want you to select the ellipse tool. Before we do this though, we need to change our foreground color. So we're going to click here. I'm going to double click, but I want to make sure it's the same exact color as my green that's over here. We should be able to sample. Find our eyedropper tool. Oh, we need to do this first. So click to make that forward, grab your eyedropper, and come over and click on your green of the tree. Notice it changes the foreground color. Do that now. So grab that tool, click and it will set it to the fill color. Now let's grab our ellipse tool and you click and drag some ellipses over, just overlapping some of your, and they can be all different shapes and sizes. And notice, because there's no stroke on it, It makes it look like they're in the tree, not that there's some foliage overstacked. Even though this is not attached to that, it still works the same because we use the same exact color. So please have a little bit of fun in making your tree here. If you want to even go a little bit further and experiment on your own, you're always welcome to do that, but please make sure that you do get all of the steps in the notes done. Make sure you go back to the video if you've missed anything in the note sheet. Have some fun and make sure you save this. That's all for lesson 2A. If you would like to, you can go ahead and go to that school bus and assemble it the way it shows, or have a little bit of fun grouping, ungrouping, changing the colors, and distorting. You can make it a nightmare bus if you wish. Good job. We'll see you in lesson 2B.